Hardy fiber cement siding is proven to withstand water, pests, and fire better than wood-based siding. And it looks better while doing it. Hardy siding has been chosen for 10 million homes and counting. See the proof at jameshardy.com.
Now back to Clint and Sean on Sackheads Radio, radiating elegancy and quality.
We're back.
We are back.
You're back. I'm back.
So we're going to wrap up here the State of the Union with a few other comments.
Mine or yours?
Go. You can go ahead.
Okay. It sucked. I was really surprised by how it was almost it was minimalist as far as his expectations go.
Yeah, it was quite minimalist. One of the things I didn't like is at one point he referred to the founders as the bearers or something to that effect. He did say founders later, but he never said founding fathers. He enhanced the war on women quite a bit. He made a lot of statements to really kind of expand that.
Well, conservatives hate women. That's just the way it is. Conservatives hate women.
I thought it was nice that Speaker Boehner dipped himself in oil again just before the State of the Union to make sure he had that nice sheen. Ken in the Executive Conservative Show comments in the chat room. Speaker Boehner wants to be considered in the ilk of the great founding father Daniel Webster. He is committed to writing a dictionary.
Was that Boehner in the background?
That was.
Oh my gosh, I thought it was Ken from the Exceptional Conservative Show. Seriously, that guy tans so much. Was it Franklin from Peanuts? Who was back there? Did you seriously?
Before we get into Mike Lee,
does he live in the tanning bed?
He does, dude.
He practically fit in. It was camouflage. He fits right into that red stripe on the flag that's hanging behind him.
I think he looked more like leather than the leather chair he sat in. It was pretty sad.
Maybe the chair had like a mask. Maybe Leatherface.
Leatherface.
I think we solved
Leatherface Boner.
Leatherface Boner. Leathery Boner.
A couple of quick things. Did you notice that
Michelle
Obama
had
a boo-boo face on, just almost like she didn't want, even when she was clapping, she just had that pout, except for when he talked about her in the Race for the Top or whatever, one of the Don't Be Fat programs that she does. That was the only time I saw her smile that entire time, which just weird to me.
And he winked and pointed at her and gave when he said that to her, because kind of like, hey, I said your name in this, so now.
And great women like Michelle Obama, and I was just like, I get you want to throw the shout out to your wife because that might help you later. You never know, but
you never know.
You can't fault the man for that,
right?
However, she really, and they showed the young gentleman who was a sergeant first class in the military who was unfortunately struck by an IED. Ranger, U.S. Army Ranger Corey Remsburg. They showed him a lot because he was, and his story is amazing, absolutely amazing. And one of the things that, and we can have the anti-military, the Gates book, Congress cutting military things. One of the things I thought he did do well is he made sure, and some are going to say that he had to because he'd been taking it.
But he did it.
But he did it. He did give the military their due respect. He told that whole story, and I give the guy credit in the sense that he did meet with First Sergeant Remsburg 4 different times.
Look,
before he was injured, in the hospital, during his recovery in Arizona, and then brought him. So I do give him credit. I don't want everyone to say you did nothing but slam him, but I'm trying to find the bright in this. I'm trying to say, okay, there's a couple things he did that he did well, and I thought that was one of the big ones. I thought he did a great job highlighting that man's story so people remember that the cost of war, which he said is now coming to an end after 12 years. The war on terror apparently is going to be over in 2014. We'll never be attacked again. But you need to highlight what our men and women in uniform who protect our nation go through.
No, he did. Then I give him credit for that. However, he didn't say the war's over. That was his campaign speech, right? We have Al-Qaeda on the run. What he said is the threat's changing.
Well,
right, it's changed. Right. It's.
But we're out of Iraq. We're going to be out of Afghanistan.
But it's totally different narrative than he was saying on the campaign trail since we lost the U.S. ambassador and we had the attack in Benghazi.
Well,
it's changed. Exactly. It's changed from Al-Qaeda's on the run. War's over. Game's over, folks.
Right.
Big bad bin Laden, he's down.
Yep.
We got him. So now, it's evolving. The threat's changing.
We took out the leadership of Al-Qaeda, but now we have all these little groups that are starting to pop up in Yemen.
But that's
Syria.
a far cry. But
comment,
did you catch that change? I don't know how many people caught that change in rhetoric.
I did pick up on that. The other thing, too, he said about Syria is we will back the opposition in Syria that isn't tied to the terrorists. And later on in the speech, and I have it 48 minutes, 38 seconds in the speech, he said that. And I said, we don't know who the hell they are now. How are we supposed to know who they're connected? Just say we're going to stay the hell out.
But we're not.
Brought up at 50 minutes, 25 seconds, the U.S. drone restrictions. He's going to use them less. Overseas. Obviously, in North Dakota, he'll probably start using them more.
Well, just to deliver packages for Amazon.
Right, exactly. We're closing Gitmo again. He brought up Israel and Palestine and how he's such a close friend of Israel, and we need to keep that.
He's a real close friend of
He brought up
Palestine.
Iran, how we eliminating the enriched uranium to the P5+1 pact. By the way, we need to start changing the names of these stupid groups from G20, P5+1. Just call it the anti-Iran bomb group. Something a little bit more realistic. Which there's a story I saw earlier today, and I think it was in the Nation or one of those, that essentially said that his whole statement on Iran, and I'm trying to pull it up right now, so just give me a second. His whole statement on Iran was bunk, or half bunk anyhow, based on the fact that Iran isn't bound to too much. They can get out of they can change it within a day if they want. So I found that funny that he was...
Well, yeah, they can just launch a missile when they finally get one built.
He was so quick to throw that out, and then it was in the freebeacon.com. Here it is. And it's on the Washington Free Beacon. It's by Adam Credo, and he did mislead the nation. And all the facts are in there. So, he did have some creativity in his speech, if you will, on things that were not necessarily 100% factual. And Joe.
I like Joe. Joe photobombed the crap out of the president. We're going to see that like on the Chive or something, right?
I'm
Photobomb.
starting to get people sending it to me in GIFs, little GIFs that it just turning around, and it's just him winking. And this is the guy that he wants.
Did somebody dare Joe Biden to photobomb the president? We need to go back into our Dare Joe Biden scroll and pull it up and see if somebody dared Joe Biden to do that. Because if they did...
He said, I'm going to have Joe Biden be in charge of the training in community colleges and make it show blah, 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 and Joe Biden...
Well, yeah, because it's community college. I mean, photobombing, right? That's kind of where it fits.
But my question is what makes you think Joe Biden has any life skills that would prepare be able to organize for other people?
Because he's like a frat kid. They're going to relate to him. Is that a serious question? Of course they're going to relate to him. So, look,
dude,
first of all,
Catch stand in 3.
I'll do it. I can't believe. I cannot believe that when we called Joe Biden's office to dare Joe Biden to photobomb the president, that he actually did it. First of all. Second of all, if you haven't checked out our Dare Joe Biden page, go to our website.
StackheadsRadio.com and click at the top, Dare Joe Biden. One last thing. If you want to, I know you may not want to sit through it again, you personally, but if our listeners watch the White House's enhanced version of the State of the Union from last night.
Does Boehner get up and clap every time?
No.
Oh, he probably did that on his own.
He all by himself.
Yeah.
On the right-hand side, they have all these little images that they put up that relate to whatever subject he's talking about. And watch how many of them are conveniently worded and chosen, and how very over-the-top ridiculous they are. And they go through the entirety of it, and you really have to pay attention. There was a couple I saw that just blew me away. I could not believe.
Like puppies running in dandelions?
No, it was just false facts and stuff, like things that just weren't even close to being true, but they threw it in. He did say, he did bring up Second Amendment again. He brought up some gun stuff later.
He stayed away from it, though, a lot. He didn't get it.
He threw it in, though, because he had to.
Yeah, but he didn't get
mark.
He didn't get into it as deep as I think he would have liked to.
Right, because I know he knows he
losing issue for him.
He did his typical every speech he does at the 42-minute mark, Obamacare advertisement that I think he gets paid to say now. Does he make money when he says that? Like you know how like if we read an on-air clip middle of the segment, like this segment's brought to you by, I think Obama must be making money on that.
For example, if I said Patriot Ordnance Factory, official rifle of Sackheads Radio.
Patriot Ordnance Factory, do tell. POF-USA.com. In this segment of the show, Mike Lee's comments this evening are brought to you by Patriot Ordnance Factory.
State of the Union address brought to you by Charmin.
You had to wipe with it. So, at the end of the day, the best way to sum up the State of the Union is this.
Oh, a bullshit artist.
That was the best that I could come up with.
And that was good. And that was the Republican response.
Pretty much. Here's I'm going to play Mike Lee. This is only about a 3-minute clip, but this is Mike Lee's response today.
Today, Americans know in their hearts that something's wrong. Much of what's wrong relates to the sense that the American dream's falling out of reach for far too many of us. We're facing an inequality crisis, one to which the president has paid lip service, but seems uninterested in truly confronting or correcting. This inequality crisis presents itself in 3 principal forms: immobility among the poor, who are being trapped in poverty by big government programs; insecurity in the middle class, where families are struggling just to get ahead, and they can't seem to do much more than that; and cronyist privilege at the top, where political and economic insiders twist the immense power of the federal government to profit at the expense of everyone else. To be fair, President Obama and his party did not create all of these problems. The Republican establishment in Washington can be just as out of touch as the Democratic establishment. However, tonight, as on numerous occasions of late, the president's lofty rhetoric ignored the fact that his administration continues to leave poor and middle-class families further behind, while he and his allies insist that the real problem is inequality itself. But where does this new inequality come from? From government. Every time it takes rights and opportunities away from the American people and gives them instead to politicians, bureaucrats, and special interests. Inequality, real inequality, is trapping poor children in failing schools to benefit bureaucrats and union bosses. It's penalizing low-income parents for getting married or getting better jobs. It's guaranteeing insurance companies taxpayer bailouts if Obamacare cuts into their profits. Inequality is blocking thousands of middle-class jobs in the energy industry as a favor to partisan donors and radical environmental activists. Inequality is denying viable unborn children any protection under the law, while exempting unsanitary late-term abortion clinics from basic safety standards. It's denying citizens their right to define marriage in their states as traditionally or as broadly as their diverse values dictate. It's the federal government hurting rural communities, especially in the West, by controlling and mismanaging public lands. It's changing laws without congressional approval and spying on American citizens without constitutional authority. And of course, Obamacare, all by itself, is an inequality Godzilla that has robbed working families of their insurance, their doctors, their wages, and their jobs. Many Americans are now seeing why some of us fought so hard to stop this train wreck over the last 4 years. Government-driven inequality is the reason why, as hardworking American families across the country struggle to make ends meet, 6 of the 10 wealthiest counties in America are now suburbs of Washington, D.C. Throughout the last 5 years, President Obama has promised an economy for the middle class. But all he's delivered is an economy for the middlemen. And tonight his party cheered as he asked for more of the same, as if the solution to inequality were, well, more inequality. Critics might push back and argue that my own party has been part of the problem, too often joining the Democrats to rig our economy to benefit the well-connected at the expense of the disconnected. I know because I'm one of those critics. But I'm speaking to you tonight because I think maybe, just maybe, that's finally starting to change.
I think it was a great response by Senator Lee. I agree with him. Like I said earlier, I brought up my friend who's a Democrat who says that he's sick of Obama. I think the country as a whole is starting to see through the left's rhetoric, including the president and some other people. It's been a slow development. It's been slow gestation, if you will. But I really think that people are starting to look at this presidency's and this administration's effectiveness as zilch.
Well, one of the things he started off with is he took a swipe at the Republican establishment being as out of touch as the Democrats in Washington, which I like because it's absolutely true. Especially guys like McCain. And did you see the Arizona GOP censored him?
Yes.
Good for them. Long time coming, and we've talked about that before, about he's more of a progressive. But I was really impressed with the fact that he threw down the Republican establishment.
Needs to happen more and more.
It really does. Look, the two-party system we've been warned against by Washington and
elected to Boehner's house for Christmas.
Even so, right? The fact that he had the courage and the testicular fortitude to come out and say it. He is more of a political philosopher than a political scientist. And here's what I mean by that. A political scientist is typically looking for ways to, there's like common middle ground, right? Ways to kind of give and take. There's give and take. How can we come together to solve problems or whatnot for the common good? Sounds good, right?
Yes.
Okay. A political philosopher or a political theorist actually has principles, and those principles are unwavering. They're immovable. And that's why I like the political philosopher better than the political scientist. Because a political philosopher, and I believe Mike Lee to be one, just from what I've seen so far, he believes in a right and wrong. He believes in a good and evil, if you will, right? A moral code. He believes that rights come from nature or nature's God and not by government. He believes that the inequality crisis comes from the fact that big government programs have kept families trapped in poverty by their very nature. Because, again, it's this idea of right and wrong. There's a moral compass, there's a moral certainty, and you act within that moral code. You act in what you believe to be good or what you believe to be right, as opposed to the political scientists that compass can move, or they can go kind of outside of what they really believe to be morally correct for the purposes of coming together. And so I respect him for that and for that purpose. But he talked about, and he went on in his speech to talk about this economic inequality, and he really threw down big government. And again, I kind of touched on it, where he's talking about these big government programs keeping people in poverty. He touched on guaranteeing insurance companies taxpayer bailouts if Obamacare cuts into their profits. He talked about the inequality of blocking middle-class jobs in the energy industry as a favor to environmental activists. I'm kind of looking at notes here. But where does all of that inequality come from, he said? He went on to say it comes from government. Yeah, government has created this inequality by these favors. And he really talks about the importance of government kind of getting out of the way and giving favors to certain groups of people, because that in and of itself is inequality. And so he points out the hypocrisy of the Obama administration, talking about that by getting into that point. He also talked about education, which is an issue Republicans have won in the past. Who forced desegregation upon the public schools?
That would have been conservatives.
It would have been Dwight Eisenhower, a Republican. Mm-hmm. And if you look at and Democrats are going to lose their frickin' mind right now. But if you look at the history of the civil rights movement, it was moved along by
Conservatives. It was moved along by, in large part, the Republican Party. It's been co-opted by the Democratic Party since. And if you doubt me on that, I beg you to look up the Civil Rights Act and kind of how that passed and how Lyndon Johnson came to sign it, but who was really behind it and pushed it.
Lyndon Johnson actually voted against it when he was a senator.
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yes, he did.
I just want people to know that.
But he's talking here about the Democrats where trapping poor children in their poorly funded, poorly equipped schools in their poor neighborhoods, which is absolutely correct. I mean, you can have – look, there's an education bill that was just introduced by a couple of Republican senators, and it talks about, hey, we should give these federal funds at the state level, and basically the funds follow the kids. So where your kid goes to school, that's where your federal funds go, and as a parent, you have a right to choose where your child goes to school if they're not in a good school, because that better education is going to close that inequality gap, is the theory behind it. It's absolutely correct. So it gets those poor kids that are trapped in those schools, gives them the ability to go outside of that and to get into a charter school or a private school of their choosing or whatnot. So he makes some very valid points that the Democrats, I mean, how do you come back to that? Well, nuh-uh, nanny boo-boo.
That's pretty much it.
You can't use public funds because what if they choose a Christian school? Well, guess what? There's nothing in the Constitution that prohibits those dollars being used for that.
Is that the federal government has to do it because some states are essentially like irresponsible children can't be trusted,
and education should be at the local level. So I know I kind of went off on a tangent there, but there were a lot of things that I liked about his rebuttal, and it was only a 12-minute response.
Total, right.
And in that 12 minutes, he basically hit him point by point. And again, he did what the Republicans failed to do because the Republican response, it was your typical party line response.
There's a reason he was in front of a Tea Party Express drape when he gave that, because it was a very Tea Party, true conservative point of view. And I thought he did an amazing job. I like Senator Lee. I think he's a good guy.
Another thing I picked up is Obama talked about, when he was talking about terrorists, talked about extremists.
Yes.
And it struck a nerve with me when I heard him use that word extremist, because I think about how he likes to paint.
He makes that connection all the time between Tea Party.
And I say Tea Party, right, but he talks about extremists. Well, what is Tea Party really? Are they extremists? Are they out to kill at people? No, they're for small government, individual liberty.
But they want to, we've said before,
so how is that
extreme? That word association. If they yell terrorist enough.
Exactly.
Then,
if he says extremists referring to terrorists enough, and now he says it to, look, I was having a conversation on the street with somebody, and they said, so I said, hey, I'm conservative, and they were definitely not conservative at all. And the response was, oh, but okay, so what are some of your views? And discuss some of these. And this, I kid you not, this was the response I got, oh, so you're not one of those teabagger extremists.
Right.
And I said, actually, everything I just outlined to you is in line with what the Tea Party believes.
I mean...
I didn't go into, hey, teabagger is really kind of inappropriate, because if you Google teabagger with your safe search off, you'll see why. But I let it go. But people don't understand what the Tea Party really is about, or what it stands for. They don't understand that it is very much in support of the American government and the love of country, but it's for individual liberty and for the government to stay out of those personal choices.
Well, that's because mainstream media has done everything they can to destroy that movement.
They really have
turned on their propaganda machine against it.
They really have, and the general public has bought it.
Right. Very few people know the true beliefs of the Tea Party.
Yep. She was floored by the fact that I said, actually, everything I just outlined to you is Tea Party view. Completely floored.
Did she almost fall right out of her Birkenstocks?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
She's a wonderful lady. She really is. She's a great person, Christian lady, but she didn't. And I mean, very educated too. I mean, it's not like I'm dealing with somebody. I was dealing with somebody who's uneducated, but she really had no idea that's what it was about. So
she very quickly just swallowed what the narrative was, And I find more and more that a lot of people, because they voted Democrat 25 years ago or 30 years ago, they're still voting Democrat today just because. And that drives me nuts. I actually had a friend that I talked to who older than I am, but he used to vote straight Republican nonstop. His family did it. He did it forever until the last couple of elections. He didn't vote for Obama because he doesn't like him. He didn't think that he was healthy for the nation. But he votes now to the person that he thinks is the most principled for the job versus one or the other. And whether I agree or disagree with who he votes for, at least the fact that he's putting that much thought into it versus just walking in, pulling a handle, and walking out, I gave him mad props for that because I think that's what more and more people need to start doing in this country. And listen, we're not going to agree on everything. We'll agree on some things, and that's fine. One of the things that I think government would work better if it did is pass the things that we agree upon and then get that out of the big things out of the way, and then the stuff that we don't agree upon we can hash out later.
Look, before we go to break, there's a story out of New York I want to touch on. And it's a tragic story, but it's also a feel-good story all at the same time. There was a 9-year-old boy, I believe it was in Fairport, New York, who died in a fire, saving some family members. 6 of his family members got out. He died trying to save his grandfather. Tragic story. However, the firefighters down there adopted him as one of their own, and he was laid to rest as a firefighter, full honors.
That's amazing.
So it's just an amazing.
God rest his soul.
God rest.
I
got chills reading it. I wanted to bring that story to our listeners.
No, the young man's an angel, and you know what those firefighters are too, for giving them the recognition that young man deserves.
Absolutely. So great.
He died a hero, so I'm glad he got a hero's funeral.
Absolutely,
that needs to happen.
And great job. Those firefighters are true patriots.
Absolutely, nothing but respect. 347-205-9399. We're going to be back on the other side. 3 minutes here. We're going to talk about the farm bill a little bit, maybe the immigration bill.
We're not going to have time to get into all that. We'll talk about whatever we feel like.
Here on the Zach Hedge Radio Show.